Today we're doing something fun. It's a tier list video. I've been wanting to do one for a while, and I thought we could go over all the different Windows versions and see which one ranks at the top and which ones don't rank so well. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm super excited, so let's not waste any more time and get right into it. As you can see, we have 5 tiers in total. We got S tier, we got the A tier, B tier, C tier, and we got F tier. Now, you might be saying, where's D tier? Well, because if you're that bad, you go straight to F tier, no questions asked. Let's get started right away with Windows 1.0. Now here I'll be bundling versions from 1.0 to 3.2 together, mostly because they were all based on MS-DOS. And also, I have to confess that personally, I've never used Windows 1.0. That's mostly because I just wasn't even born back then when it came out, so my rating here should be taken with a grain of salt. That being said, I'm gonna be putting Windows 1.0 onto B tier because it was the first Windows version that started it all. And from what I've read online on various forum threads, people who used it back then do look fondly on this OS. And again, because mostly it's the first OS, it goes to B tier. Next, we're going straight to Windows 95, and this OS was a fairly big deal because it introduced so many things to Windows. Mainly the taskbar and the iconic start menu was born starting with Windows 95. That being said, it had a lot of bugs, and again, similar to Windows 1.0, I was just a bit too young to experience this OS. However, again, various forum threads and Reddit and things like that do suggest that people did experience a lot of bugs with Windows 95. At the same time, it was a big change from the first version of Windows, with much improved GUI, like I mentioned earlier. Also, this was at the time when Windows was getting very popular and a lot of home computers got bundled with Windows 95. So, since it was such a big change from Windows 1.0 and introduced so many new things, I think it deserves to be in A tier. But now, this is finally the time where I can actually give you my own personal experience and bring you that to the mix, because we're talking about Windows 98. We had a really old, even at the time, not so amazing compact computer with my family, which did run Windows 98, that I really have fond memories of. It was the first family computer that we had, and my brother and I were using floppies and CDs to install games and things. And sadly, after many years, it stopped working, and yeah, we just decided to throw it out altogether. I still remember my dad getting that PC into his car, and today I kind of regret not keeping it, honestly, because it would have been a cool retro PC to keep, and just for the, you know, sentimental reasons. But again, back to Windows 98, I mean, it was generally regarded as much improved over 95. It added things like proper USB support, FAT32 support, and even dual monitor support, which was, yeah, can you imagine like putting 2 CRT monitors like together? I wonder if anyone did that. Comment down below, let me know. Windows 98 was also the first to introduce Clippy. I mean, we all remember Clippy, don't we? He was awesome. My personal nostalgia aside, this OS was not perfect. It still had a lot of bugs, and many people were also not happy about MS-DOS compatibility. Windows 98 was around the time when Windows started to sort of leave MS-DOS behind and move to something called the NT kernel. We will talk about kernels later, but many people were not happy that some MS-DOS apps were not compatible. One more notable thing about Windows 98 is that it's also now considered to be one of the best OSs for retro PC gaming. A lot of older games work really well on Windows 98, and I remember as a kid putting hours and hours into games like Age of Empires 2, Heroes of Might and Magic 3 and 2, and it's less popular, but still awesome siblings like Might and Magic 6 and 7. I mean, I just love playing those RPG games with my brother. So with all of that in mind, I'm sorry, but I'll be putting Windows 98, it goes right into S tier because I think it was awesome. You can feel free to disagree in the comments below. Okay, let's move on to Windows 2000. Now, arguably, Windows 2000 is a better OS than Windows 98 since it was way more stable and it has a few refinements as well. However, upon launching, not all games and programs were compatible with Windows 2000. Also, you could argue that Microsoft was in this weird phase of releasing new versions of Windows rather too quickly. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy, but they were pumping out these versions so fast. I mean, Windows 98 came out in 1998, Windows 98 SE came out in 1999, and then Windows 2000 came out in February of 2000. And all I'm saying is that while it was better, Windows 2000 was, it wasn't as popular as Windows 98 because most people just didn't feel the need to upgrade. I mean, why would you upgrade if you just had this other OS come out like not too long ago? So for all these reasons, I think it's fair to put Windows 2000 in the A tier. It's good, but it left you wanting more because it's just, yeah, it's just not a big gap there between versions. And speaking of releasing Windows too quickly, up next we got what's probably considered to be one of the worst regarded Windows versions, and that's Windows ME. Yes, the infamous ME. Released just 7 months after Windows 2000, it left many people unimpressed and some even downright disappointed. To put it into semi-modern perspective, Windows ME was kind of like Windows Vista when that came out. I guess that's also a bit old now. And trust me, we'll get into Vista later on, but essentially Windows ME ran horrible on most PCs and it had a ton of performance complaints from users. That was because it had horrible memory leaking bugs, which meant that everything took ages to load up on those old computers. At this time, Microsoft also realized that the NT kernel, which didn't use DOS, was going to be the future. Windows 2000 used the NT kernel and ran much better, but ME was the last version of Windows to use the NX kernel based on Windows that was still sort of tied to MS-DOS. Now it's a bit more complicated than that, so I'm giving you a kind of a condensed version, but it's a big reason why Windows ME ran so poorly. I've personally not experienced Windows ME, but have read dozens of horror stories of people just having the worst time with it. So I believe nobody would be upset if I put Windows ME into F tier. And now it's time to talk about the legendary, the amazing, and probably the most iconic OS to be ever released. And that's of course Windows XP. What can I say about XP without just being a total fanboy of it, right? I mean, it was the version of Windows that most people started with, at least in my generation. Released in 2001, it made Windows ME buyers feel really bad. XP was the beginning of what I'd call modern Windows. In other words, it moved away from the old school design of Windows 98 and embraced a bit of style, I would say. The interface and design also reached its peak in my opinion. We haven't seen a big shift ever since XP in terms of functionality, and we're probably never going to see that ever again with Windows. You still have your start menu, your taskbar, your control panel, which in fairness is slowly going away in more modern versions of Windows. Honestly, the main reason why so many people loved XP was probably because of the boom of computer use in early 2000s. It became more and more accessible to get a home PC, and more households owned at least one of them. And because of that, most PCs at the time came with XP. And that's why I think people have so much nostalgia for it. I mean, just look at kids nowadays. I mean, they will probably have nostalgia for Windows 10 or 11 when that eventually goes old or retro. So I will be putting XP into S tier, and I think nobody's going to disagree with that. If you will, I mean, again, put them in the comments below. It was awesome, it was stable, it had a lot of theme options, which was a new thing at the time. It ran better on most PCs, including gaming in general. And what helped people extend their love and support of Windows XP was probably the release of Windows Vista. Man, this will be controversial because today there's two sides of the coin when it comes to talking about Vista. There's one side of the coin where people say, okay, you know what, Vista was horrible for Windows. It was a big flop, nobody liked Vista, it ran terribly bad on my PC, there were no drivers, and everything was terrible. And there's another side of the coin where people say, you know, Vista was kind of ahead of its time with its Aero desktop interface and support for new features. The latter narrative really became more popular in more recent years due to people getting more perspective of the importance of Windows Vista. I think the most popular of which was probably Linus making his video and expressing his love for Vista. It's a great video, by the way, make sure to check it out. In my opinion, however, I think Vista was a necessary step for Microsoft to take. You could think of it like this. Vista had to walk so that Windows 7 could run. Vista at launch was not great. Most computers at the time coming off of XP were not powerful enough to run with its higher system requirements. Driver compatibility was also subpar as developers had to scramble and release drivers to support Windows Vista. But all of that aside, It was, in my opinion, an important step forward, and it in a sense became amazing in its real final form, Windows 7. It's kind of like Goku going Super Saiyan 3 in DBZ, right? I mean, Windows 7 was kind of Vista, but upgraded. Which is why, and this might be controversial, I'm putting Windows Vista into C tier. I don't think it deserved all the hate that it got, but at the same time, it wasn't amazing, if you could call it that. But the OS that everyone certainly did not hate was Windows 7. I will keep this part really brief because we did make a whole Windows 7 revisit video, so definitely go watch that one. I'll leave it right here. Other than that, I think we can all agree that Windows 7 was awesome and loved by most, if not all people. It kept the arrow interface from Windows Vista, and I loved it quite a lot actually. It ran a whole lot better, though I would argue that it performed better not because of Windows 7, but because of the fact that PCs just became much better and more powerful. Windows 7 was extremely popular, and in fact it was so popular that Microsoft decided to bring a feature from Windows 10 to Windows XP, which was kind of weird, but DirectX 12 was originally meant to be a Windows 10 exclusive feature, but in 2019 it became available on Windows 7 as well. That just shows you how popular Windows 7 truly was. So for all intents and purposes, we're putting Windows 7 into S tier. Now, you know how it goes with Microsoft. They release a good version of Windows and then they release a really bad one. So next, we're talking about Windows 8. When Windows 8 came out, it felt like Microsoft had lost its way. It's like ditching the desktop UI in favor of the one designed for tablets. And it just felt so wrong. I mean, Windows 8 is a perfect example of ignoring your audience. Microsoft's vision was to have an OS that's good for both tablet and PCs. But the whole interface never made sense to me as a mouse user. I mean, yeah, Microsoft, I'm using a mouse to control my computer, right? So it's just kind of weird that we had this tablet interface in Windows. Something that should be noted that Microsoft did respond to the criticism of the start menu not being there, and they did that with Windows 8.1. Which did add like a desktop mode, which brought it back. And actually, similar to Windows Vista nowadays, I do see the commentary that Windows 8.1 specifically was actually pretty good. And people did find Windows 8.1 to be stable, and it also did not have the annoying update situation that Windows 10 had, which we will talk about in just a minute. So rating wise, I'm a bit skeptical here. I'm not sure what to do, but I think it's fair to say that Windows 8 goes to the F tier because of what they did with the interface and everything, but Windows 8.1 was actually pretty good with all the changes that they made, so I will be putting it into B tier. I think that's fair. Next, we gotta talk about Windows 10, and at first I remember people's reaction was very positive to Windows 10. I mean, you were coming off of Windows 8, which, again, had that terrible interface. Windows 10, on the other hand, had the desktop interface. It looked modern and sleek, but there were a few things that people did hate on. First of which is the updates. Microsoft really screwed up the updates on Windows 10 upon release. They had a mind of their own and would install just willingly while you were just doing stuff on your PC. And memes like this were rampant on the internet, and for good reason too. Thankfully, this was fixed and Windows 10 today is no longer doing that. But one thing that is still not fixed are the privacy concerns. Windows 10 was notorious for spying and having terrible privacy considerations for its users. Programs like Shutup 10 became the first thing most people would install with Windows 10, as it would be necessary to disable tons of telemetry. Users hated this, like really hated this. There were rumors going around that Windows 10 was built with spying in mind and lots of similar theories like that. However, at its core, it was a great OS, at least in my opinion it was. It was stable, ran well, just like Windows 7. It also boasted like better times when it comes to booting up your PC. It had support for features like multi-desktop and great stability and driver compatibility. Also, from my experience, Windows 10 booted up much quicker than say 7 or 8. Usually you would expect that a new OS would slow things down, but 10 didn't, so which was pretty surprising. Anyway, as much as I love Windows 10, I can't really give it a good rating more than a B tier, and that's mostly because of the privacy concerns. Now, if you don't care about that, I mean, it's up to you, but I would say that privacy is a big thing. I mean, we are running a Surfshark channel, so we do care about privacy a lot, but yeah, Windows 10 goes into B tier. Now, Microsoft did state that Windows 10 was the last version of Windows. Psych, in 2021, they released Windows 11, so joke's on you, I guess. Anyway, Windows 11, I thought was a very marginal upgrade from 10 at launch. It had some new things that 10 had, but also some that seemingly were removed. Take the right-click menu, for instance. This menu sucks. I'm sorry, it's just not good. I hate it. I don't know why Microsoft changed it. I always have to click more options to find the old menu. I also hated how at launch, you just couldn't access the task manager via taskbar by just right-clicking it. Similar to the launch of Windows 8, sometimes it feels like they don't know who their core audience is. On the other hand, there are some recent Windows 11 updates that I really like. In a recent video, I raved about the ability to have tabbed folders, which was an absolute game changer for my productivity. 11 also had some improvements in the privacy front compared to Windows 10 at launch. Windows 11 allows you to disable a lot of telemetry much easier. Also, my personal PC with Windows 10, I was getting more blue screens of death compared to 11, and yeah, it seems like people online also report having better overall stability with 11. Though your situation might differ, and so all in all, I really want to put Windows 11 into A tier, but I mean, I really do, but with all things considered, it's still the same ballpark as Windows 10, so B tier. It just didn't offer anything that would blow me away. And Android app support was limited to Amazon Store, certain UI decisions were just strange, like that right-click menu, and I will not shut up about that right-click menu. You gotta bring it back to the old one. I'm sorry, I just have to say it. So overall, looking at this list, yeah, some of these rankings were influenced by my personal experiences and nostalgia, which I tried to just not think about, but overall, I was really fond of my memories with XP and 7. I think those were when Windows was at its peak. Anyway, that'll be all for this video. If you enjoyed it and you want more videos like this, then press that like button, drop a comment down below, let us know what you thought of the video. Make sure to check out Surfshark as well, the best all-in-one security solution for you, and watch this video next to find out how we ran Windows 7 on an old HP laptop from 2008. That's gonna be all for me. Take care.